Hello and welcome to everyone who's just joining us. We're going to get started in just a few minutes. Thank you for being on time and prompt today. It's lovely to have you all here. Um, while you are waiting for us to get started, it would be so great if you could practice using our chat function. We have a little bit of an icebreaker question for you to get started. So I would love for you to think of a goal. Either, it can be sort of work related, energy related, doesn't have to be energy related, but think of a goal, either your own or one that you've seen at an organizational level, a friend, a family member, something that was not achieved. Okay? And so I would love for you to share one thing you think contributed to the goal not being achieved. And you can go ahead and utilize the chat while we're waiting for folks to join us. So plug that right into the chat. What is a goal? What is one reason why a goal was not achieved that you've seen? Great. I see some comments coming through in the chat. Lucas has a comment here, lack of clarity. An excellent point for and a reason why sometimes goals are not achieved. Thank you, Lucas. So for those of you who are just joining, we're going to get started in just a minute, but we would love for you to answer this little icebreaker question around thinking of a goal. It can be energy related or not, that was not achieved, and put in the chat one reason why it might not have been achieved. So we've also got Michelle has said lack of buy-in or commitment. Excellent observation, Michelle. So not having sort of people committed or people bought into your goal, it makes it very hard to achieve. And we have Jenna with scope creep. Yeah, so maybe the goal was not well defined and it started to get bigger than it was originally intended. Excellent. Thank you, Lucas, Michelle, and Jenna for those observations. And Debbie says changing priorities. Yeah, absolutely. So maybe it wasn't flexible enough and priorities changed. Very good. So again, we're just going to get started shortly, but feel free to utilize the chat and answer the question we have up on the screen. And I can still hear people popping in like popcorn, so we'll wait maybe just one more minute before we get started. Excellent. Okay. Great. So I think now is a good time to get started. If you do think of anything, you can go ahead and still plug it into the chat as we kick off. We're going to actually start off hearing from Vicky today. So we're excited to have Vicky here from the IESO to talk a bit about some upcoming program changes or updates. Vicky, would you like to get started and kick us off here?
Sure, great, thanks. I'm Vicky Gagno. I work in demand side management at the Independent Electricity System Operator. Next slide. And as many of you may know, the Minister of Energy, Mr. Lecce, announced in January that we are moving to a more enduring commitment to demand side management. So instead of the time-bound stop and start program model that we've had in the past, he made a 12-year funding commitment to ensure demand side management is part of energy decision-making moving forward. So $10.9 billion over 12 years, almost $1 billion a year. And most of the existing programs for residential and commercial consumers are continuing with similar incentive levels. And there are some notable new programs, including the Home Renovation Savings Program for residential customers, expanding the Peak Perks, the residential demand response program, expanding it into small businesses, and the installation of solar PV systems for commercial customers. And there's also funding for LDCs to play a more proactive role in demand side management. Next slide. So many folks are familiar with the retrofit program, which is our largest commercial program and incents projects that provide sustainable and measurable and verifiable reductions in peak electricity demand and electricity consumption. There's a prescriptive stream for incentives on specific measures and a custom stream for more unique solutions incented on the amount of energy or demand savings. And the prescriptive stream includes specific incentives for network lighting controls and a variety of HVAC equipment and other manufacturing equipment. And we have some new prescriptive incentive measures this year, including for computer room air conditioning and for solar photovoltaic. Next slide. So one of the biggest enhancements to the retrofit program this year is the expansion of incentives for solar PV across the province. Last year, there was a regional pilot in the city of Ottawa, and that has now been expanded across the province. There are two categories of incentives for solar PV. The micro generation up to 10 kilowatts DC, it's incented at $1,000 a kilowatt, or small to medium generation, which goes from 10 kilowatts up to a megawatt AC, and that's $860 a kilowatt. The incentives are capped at 50% of the total installed product cost, including labor and materials, and it's for behind the meter on-site facility consumption to supply peak. So load displacement only, no net metering is allowed. And the system can be mounted on new or existing building rooftops or walls or parking canopies. And all permits and permissions are still required from the local municipality and the LDCs. So an approval for PV incentives through the retrofit program doesn't guarantee connectivity. So please contact them early. And for the PV systems larger than 1 megawatt are eligible, but the incentives are capped at 1 megawatt. And regional adders are not available for the PV incentives. Next slide. A few other new additions to the retrofit program, including a prescriptive measure for computer room air conditioning for data centers, and this is for new or existing data center buildings. And energy management information systems, which is for industrial organizations only, as it's part of the NRCan funded GIF-MP program for industrial facilities. And along with that, there is a funded energy managers right now just for the industrial sector. However, we are looking at expanding the funded energy manager program to the broader commercial sector, including the public sector soon. So those incentives will be up to $100,000 or 50% of the salary cost for the incremental new energy manager. So stay tuned for that. And finally, as I mentioned previously, prescriptive lighting controls are now incented through the instant discounts program, but network lighting controls remain in the retrofit program. And with that, I'll hand it back over to CIUT to continue with the webinar.
Thank you so much, Vicki, for all those great updates and insights into what's going on at the program level. So we're going to get things started with the main program now. So my name is Amanda, and I will be your energy skills coach today. And then we also have Sophia joining us to help with production and keep things running smoothly. I want to mention that this is meant to be a workshop, right? Not just a presentation. So we do have a participant workbook that we created, and Sophia has just dropped that into the chat. It's going to be super helpful for you to follow along with this workbook. You can download it. You can add notes to it, and it's going to very much be used in the breakout sessions. So you are going to be doing some workshopping with your fellow attendees in this workshop, and you will need that workbook. It explains the case study that you're going to be working on. It's also a great takeaway for after the session. It has lots of good information so that you don't forget what you learn here today. So today we're going to explore how to set energy reduction targets in a way that increases the likelihood of achieving them. So to do that, we're going to learn how defining your target can impact the likelihood of success. We're going to practice applying a framework to develop more effective targets. And we're also going to develop a plan to improve targets within your organization. So to start off with this and what we're doing, before we really get into it, I want to ask the group, what is, and I want to just say here, I would love to hear you unmute and share. You can also use the chat to answer questions that I'm asking, but we love the engagement. So please do feel free to, unmute and share your thoughts. But I'd like to know, is there anything about how this target is written or defined that might contribute to an organization failing to achieve the goal? What is wrong with this target? And I'll give it a minute for you to think about it and to respond. Yeah, so we're seeing some stuff in the chat come through. So Alan said it's not measurable. Or quantifiable. Yeah, absolutely. Oh, you can't unmute. Oh no, this is a challenge. Sophia, can we check the settings and make sure that folks are able to unmute themselves?
I'll look into that. Thank you.
Thank you. So we have Michelle saying it's too broad. Lucas is already jumping ahead. It's not a SMART goal. Absolutely, Lucas. Alan, there's no time frame. Unrealistic or unreachable. Not SMART. Excellent. Which utility exactly, Michelle, and compared to what, right? So what are we? It's very broad, this target. It's not specific enough. We have no actions taken for exceedance, no time frame. Absolutely. I think you've all really hit so much of that on the head. Is it clear what needs to be achieved, right? It's not. And is it clear when the goal needs to be met? So those are two big gaps here in this target. So you just identified some key issues with that target. It was vague, right? It lacked specific details or actionable information. What should we do with it? And as a solution to some of those issues, we can think about how to make a target SMART. So you're probably already familiar with SMART targets. This is a very common way to improve targets by making sure that they are specific, right? That they are measurable, that they're achievable or realistic, that they are relevant to your context and your situation, and also that they are time bound. They need to have a certain time frame. So we can take that target, right, to reduce utility costs, and we can make it more specific. So in this case, what utilities are we talking about? So we're going to reduce electricity and natural gas costs. That makes it more specific. We can also make it more measurable by saying how much we want to reduce them by. So now 80% cost reduction might be a little unrealistic. So we want to make it achievable, but maybe still ambitious. So maybe 30% is more achievable, more realistic. And we want to make sure the target is relevant, right? So meaning it aligns with our overall strategies. In this example, maybe that means specifying which facilities it applies to, right? So it owned facilities. This has suddenly become, more specific. And lastly, we want to make sure it's time bound. When do we want to achieve this target by? So suddenly now this target, which was quite broad and general, has become a SMART target. So I'm curious, is this target, and feel free to unmute, I think you're all set up now to be able to talk back at me. Is this target more likely to lead to success than the old version? Any thoughts around that? this reduce electricity and natural gas costs at owned facilities by 30% by 2030. What do we think of this?
Yeah, it has a time frame and what is the expected goal. Instead of
Yeah.
vague, it has clear outline.
Absolutely. So it's definitely a big improvement, but there are still some shortcomings when it comes to this new target. You know, think about your organization and if this was a target they had set. Imagine that it's 2030 and you've fallen short of reaching this target. You know, reflecting on why you fell short, how might the definition of this target that is quite specific have contributed to not achieving the goal? What might be lacking from this commitment? Does anyone have any thoughts around that? And Debbie has said, how will consumption be reduced? Yeah, how.
It has a quantitative measure, but it doesn't have like a baseline and a target. Like there's no comparable, right? So
yeah, compared to what? So Natalie mentioned that in the chat as well. I think that was Larry. Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. Compared to what? And also what was mentioned, how will consumption be reduced? Right? So it's not clear. Let's say you were the facility manager. Is it really clear what you need to start doing right now in 2025 to achieve that target? You know, we could sort that out. We could get there. But at the moment, the way that this is written, we don't actually know how we're going to get there. And to Natalie's point, 30% compared to what? To Larry's point. So there's a little more needed around this. Okay, so what are kind of some of these common pitfalls around organizations setting targets? You know, typically they revolve around setting clear direction, right? The common pitfalls involve a lack of clear direction. The way targets are written, which is another way of saying, you know, the way organizations commit to change, because ultimately targets are about a commitment to change, can contribute to failure. So this can happen if the commitment isn't specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound, right? If it's not SMART, we know this. If it lacks focus on what needs to happen, can also lead to pitfalls. If it lacks alignment, how are people aligning? How are they coming together to achieve this? And are people bought in, right? We said at the beginning, we need that buy-in, and targets often fail because you don't have people bought in. Or if it lacks clarity around who is accountable for aspects of success. So in a lot of instances, the targets, these commitments are made, but because they lack these things, people in the organization assume someone else is working on it, right? So to be effective, these commitments need to be clear, not just about what they want to achieve, but what needs to happen to achieve it. And that's where many, even SMART targets can fall short. So we're going to introduce a bit of a solution for this challenge. To really help address this, we're going to explore a framework for setting targets, and that's called Objectives and Key Results, or the OKR framework, it's also known as. So what is this framework? It's ultimately a goal-setting method that involves establishing objectives and key results. It can be used by individuals, right, for your personal goals at work or in life. It can be used by teams as team goals to come together. It's been used by organizations such as Google, by LinkedIn and Microsoft, and it involves both setting and tracking goals that are supported by key results. And this is really the critical part that I want to drive home. The key results are established as a causal relationship with the objective. It's a dependency. If you want to achieve your objective, you need to achieve those key results, right? They're critical. So these key results must happen to achieve your objective. And I just want to make sure that's very clear. So I'm going to give an example here. from an organization we're all probably quite familiar with. So this is Netflix, and they had a growth plan which involved expanding their global reach as part of an objective, right? So their key results included launching Netflix services in 5 new countries, achieving 10 million new international subscribers, increasing content production in local languages by 25%. So those were 3 key results that they strongly felt would help support their objective. And the cool thing about these key results that Netflix set is you can really see how they were spread across the business. So between, content development, marketing, and business development functions, all of the organization really, they had a role to play in expanding global reach. They knew what they were going to be doing. And it was clear to them what they had to do that, okay? So before we talk about what this could look like in your organization, we're going to practice setting some key results with something very simple and pretty low stakes, right? So not too emotionally connected to this. It's not an energy specific thing. So your goal is to consistently arrive at work by 8 a.m. That's the goal. So I want to know from you, and we've kind of come up with one example already, but I want you to come up with the examples of key results that need to happen to achieve the objective. So we already have this example: to arrive to work by 8 a.m. I need to leave the house by 7:15. What other key results must be achieved to be successful, at the objective? Would love to hear. And Larry, do these key results have to be measurable? I mean, it's good if they are measurable. It's good if you can make them sort of more smart, for sure. But think of things that are really dependencies. It has to occur for this to be successful. And I will let you go ahead and unmute to share, or you can use the chat. What are some other things? Yeah, wake up on time. That's absolutely, wake up on time is a perfect example. It's not measurable, but if you don't do that, and maybe you have to make it measurable, what time do you have to wake up at, right? We can set, I know it takes me 45 minutes, so I have to wake up at this time. Jenna said, prepare and pack lunch the night before. Yeah, absolutely. And it has to be in the fridge. It has to be ready to go. And don't forget that lunch either, Jenna. It's important. And Debbie says, leave enough time to get ready. Yeah, absolutely. And so maybe to make that measurable, Debbie, you need to know how much time you need to get ready. Some of us might need more time than others. Alan says, check weather, road conditions to allow sufficient travel time that departure time is realized. I think it's realized or realistic. And Atish says, plan ahead step by step. Yeah, Atish, what are those steps? That's key. These key results are the steps that we're planning ahead. And Christina says, would need to know obstacles on the way, i.e. traffic conditions. Yeah, so one of those things might be to check traffic by, by 7 p.m. before you're leaving. Michelle says, no accidents, backups on the way to work, sleep on time and wake up on time. Absolutely. So thinking that far ahead, that we're setting a bedtime, a specific bedtime, so you get enough sleep. Michelle, I love that. You have enough gas to get to work. That is critical. So maybe it's keeping your tank of gas always on half full at least. I love this, Bamin, that you said, make sure everyone is okay with you to leave. So that's one thing that I think is really important with this one. We have to think about this. Could you still get to work on time if this other thing didn't happen? And for folks that have a spouse or children, there's a reality that sometimes we have other people involved, right? And this is true also for us in our organizations, that there's other people involved, and we can't always just set key results without thinking about those other people's role that is to play. And I know when you have kids, when you have a spouse, there may be, things happening around them that you need to work into this and factor in. The other question around this is, are there any circumstances that need to be maintained? Example, never let gas in the car get below 1/8 of a tank. So we talked about that gas challenge or that gas issue. We have Brennan. I'm not sure if I should say this one. Let your mother live with you so you can get out of the house before the kids. That's one solution, absolutely. I don't know if I would call that, Brennan, a SMART target, but it's definitely something that involves other people that might be able to help you. Excellent. So thank you all. I think this was a really good little practice, a little warm up. We are going to apply this to energy related objectives. So this is really just to get us thinking about what are those things that absolutely have to happen for us to be able to make it to work on time. So there are a lot of benefits to using this target setting framework. We have... there are many benefits. Sorry, I will just ask that you are muting yourself if you're not speaking. Sorry, we just had a little bit of disruption, but I think we've taken care of that. Okay. So there are benefits to using a target setting framework, and we've come up with some benefits that we think are really important, and a good reason why we would want to employ this framework. Thinking about the objective of kind of getting to work on time and the key results you came up with, how do you think establishing those key results could result in these benefits? So, one benefit is really about it gives you focus, right? It allows you to focus your energy and attention on the objective by having key results. Another benefit is that it provides alignment. It brings people together, right? To get everyone who is involved working on that same objective. It also has them committed to that objective and working together on that. And it provides accountability, so people know who is ultimately responsible for the achievement of that objective or those key results. And then it also allows for adaptability or changing circumstances. So I wonder if anyone has some ideas specific to this example that we gave of getting to work on time. How would those key results that you came up with provide these benefits? Would anyone be willing to kind of illustrate that by sharing how would it provide focus? How would it provide alignment or commitment? Any thoughts? And you can feel free to unmute, or you can utilize the chat function as well.
It kind of defines what's primary in the like your primary direct, like I guess in like Six Sigma would be like CTQs or something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. So it defines it, and I think that definition does a lot of provides a lot of benefits. So it provides focus, the definition, and what needs to happen, right? And it also allows for that commitment. So who needs to be involved? Maybe your kids and your wife also need to be committed to you getting to work on time. Yeah, or your husband, I should say. So it helps with that definition, and to get people involved and to get everyone focused on that for sure. Any other things that we could define as benefits to those OKRs specific to the getting to work example? How might it provide adaptability to have key results associated with getting to work on time. Any thoughts around that? How might it help with adaptability? Bauman said keeping your job. Yeah, that's a benefit, a result in the end, I think. But so on this topic of adaptability, OKRs are useful because they can easily adapt to changing circumstances. You've established your key results to arrive to work at 8 a.m. What if your start time changes to 7 or 9, right? Or you get a dog that needs to be walked in the morning. Once you have those key results, it's actually really easy to see how the key results need to adjust, right? Maybe by 10 minutes back, by getting someone else involved. Maybe your son is going to walk the dog in the morning. You need to make some little adjustments there. So it helps when those are defined that you can easily kind of move them around and adjust them to fit the new slightly different objective. So it does provide a lot of flexibility. And Sky said, moving other less impactful tasks aside. Yeah, that as well. I think that sort of adaptability and sort of alignment and focus can really work together and ensure that, you know, you're able to prioritize. Like maybe eating a super healthy breakfast is a little bit less important to you at this time than getting to work on time. So you adjust how you're working with your targets and being adaptable that way. Thank you, Sky. And Larry said also data to help measure and improve. Yeah, so having the key results, doing that day after day, you're going to gather data on how it works for you, how you need to adjust. Maybe, you know, you actually need to always keep your tank at 3/4 of a tank, not half full, because you recognize that your commute is much longer than you anticipated and you need more gas or something like that. So you're able to get data through this exercise, adapt and change. I think that's a really good point, Larry. Thank you for adding that. Excellent. So there are many ways, obviously, that this target setting framework benefits us. So now we're going to look at some examples of energy-related objectives and key results. And for each example, I want you to identify which key result is the weakest. So which one is the least likely to help you hit your objective, okay? And it doesn't mean that it doesn't help you in some way. It's just that it's the least likely. And I want you to remember here, a good test of a key result is to ask yourself, does this key result provide clarity on what needs to happen to achieve the objective? Okay, so we have 3 little examples that we're going to go through. Feel free to utilize the chat, or you can unmute yourself and let me know which one is the weakest. So our first objective is to cut municipal energy consumption by 20%. So which key result is least likely to support this? So the first one is to increase employee awareness of energy waste. The second one is to upgrade all lighting to LEDs. And the third is to recommission all buildings over 80,000 square feet. And we've got 2, 3, 4, 5 answers in the chat. Thank you, Michelle and Alan and Bauman and Hathipka and Payette. Thank you so much for those contributions. And Jesse. Oh, Jesse says 1, 2, and 3. I agree, Jesse, that all 3 will support it. But that first one, right, increasing employee awareness of energy waste, could support the achievement of the objective, but it's vague. It doesn't provide clarity on exactly what needs to happen. If employee behavior change is required to achieve the objective, make this key result more specific about what needs to happen, like reducing energy consumption outside operating hours by turning things off, right? That makes it more specific. I love that, Larry. Yeah, you can't calculate one. You can't really quantify it. So it makes it obviously not as impactful there. Excellent job. And then we have one here. So we want to cut a paper mill's energy cost by 15%. So which key result here is the least likely to contribute to this achievement of this objective? So we have to implement a heat recovery system to recover at least 25% of dryer waste heat, to train and verify compliance of all staff on energy efficient operating procedures. And then the third key result is to create an energy policy and have it signed by all executives and communicated to all employees. So which one of these is least likely or is the weakest? Brian says 3. And Payette says 3. Jenna says 3. Most folks say 3. Larry, yes, it's a good point. Only one is measurable. But you can train and verify compliance of all staff. I mean, it's harder, right? It's more of a qualitative goal, but I think technically, you know, through sort of HR, you could kind of get that to happen. So I would agree here. Creating an energy policy is specific and it's a good idea and it can be helpful, but there isn't a causal relationship between it and the objective. So those two things could happen independently. It doesn't need to happen to achieve the objective, right? So we're lacking that sort of causal relationship there. The energy policy could be part of the planning or the execution of the objectives and key results to really help ensure people are aware of these commitments and expectations. And then finally, we have this objective, reduce building portfolio energy-based, so mouthful, reduce building portfolio energy-based GHG emissions by 60% by 2040. So our key results here, this one is a little bit trickier, I have to admit. We're looking for the weakest key result. So the first one is to reduce average building energy intensity by 20%, maintain a 0% increase in annual weather-adjusted utility costs, or electrify space heating for 80% of buildings. Any ideas on which one would be least impactful or the weakest towards meeting this target? 2. Excellent, Michelle. Thank you. 2. Chris, yeah. Excellent. Yeah, I think everyone is trending on 2. Absolutely. So holding utility costs steady doesn't have, again, a causal relationship with the objective. If this is an important piece for this organization, it should be built into the objective and making sure the key results are focused on what needs to happen to achieve those cost-effective reductions, right? So, but that causal relationship is missing for this one. Excellent. And Michelle says utility costs may not be correlated to GHG emissions. Absolutely, that's very true. So there are some basic things that can be done to ensure you are designing effective key results, but each organization will need a strategy based on where you're at specifically. So make sure when you're setting key results that you really start with the end in mind, right? Starting with the end, where you want to achieve, and work backwards from there. And make sure you're making it measurable, right? That's one of the most important kind of aspects of those SMART goals, and something that I think Alan kind of repeated a few times in the chat, that it's not measurable, right? It's not measurable. So making them measurable is really important and will go a long way. And also make it manageable. It has to be achievable. It has to be realistic. And if it's not, you're really going to have a hard time getting buy-in from people who, you think can influence it or can support the achievement of this. So it has to be realistic and achievable. So we're going to go into a breakout room at this time. We're going to actually spend 10 minutes in this breakout, and I want to ask that you pull up the workbook because you're going to need it, because there's a case study on page 5 of the workbook that you will need to reference in order to do this breakout. So we're going to send people into groups of, I think, kind of 3 to 4 people, 4 to 5 people. Sophia will get you set up. And I want you in your group to read the case study and try to kind of get through it quickly. I will pull it up on the screen just so you kind of have a look at it. And I want you to work together as a team to identify key results that will support successful achievement of the objective that is in the case study. Okay, so the case study contains their energy-related objective and some information that's important, providing context about their current energy consumption, GHG emissions, and major construction plans. These are factors that will influence what your key results look like. So for this, I want you to identify 3 key results that will help this organization meet their objective. Okay, so I'm going to show you what this case study looks like, and I'm going to ask Sophia, can you drop the workbook into the chat again in case anybody missed receiving it?
Absolutely.
Great, thank you. Okay, so this is what the case study looks like for you all. Just going to see here. Oops. 1 second while I set this up. Okay. Just gonna make sure we have a good look at it before I send you off. And the best thing to do, I'm seeing a few folks using the case study or inside the case study, and I will ask that you download it. It's going to be the best for you to not work over other people's work. So that once you have that in the chat, just go ahead and download it. So we're going to share this. Excellent. So our case study is here. So this is the case study is for an Ontario university, okay, and they have the following objective. They want to reduce energy-based GHG emissions by 60% from 2024 levels by 2025, okay? We're not necessarily here to judge their objective. We want to think of key results that will help them meet it. Okay, so here you have a breakdown of their emissions inventory. So it shows their natural gas emissions at 55%, natural gas space heating at 22%, electricity at 22%, and then fuel for campus vehicles at 1%. You'll also note that they are about 15% higher than the average for their EUI for Ontario universities. So they're trending higher than the average and about 25% higher than the lowest Ontario university. And then for their capital plans, they plan to add 2 new large buildings between 2024 and 2050, and there's plans for major renovations and upgrades to 4 existing buildings between 2024 and 2050. So using this, this case study, I would love for you all to come up with some key results that they could do to help them achieve this. So I just want to check in with Sophia. Sophia, are we sort of set up to send folks into the breakout rooms?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Great. And I want to check if anyone has any questions about what you're doing. You can go ahead and write in your key results right into the workbook. Any questions about how to do this? Everyone's clear? So please do take a few notes. Note what you talk about, because I want to have a few of you share back what your key results are that you identify for this organization. Okay, so let's go ahead and send folks off for 10 minutes, Sophia, and we will see everyone back here after you have a chance to talk.
Sounds good.
Okay, I see some stuff in the chat here that folks came up with, but I would also love to ask for you to unmute and maybe share what you learned or what you came up with as some key results for this objective. Anyone like to share? Yeah, go ahead.
We have discussed. We faces the same issue with the document you had shared. Something weird.
Okay. Yeah.
So the points, the university, based on the pie chart, the greenhouse gas emissions are mostly through the natural gas consumption, 55% from the district stream and 22% from the in-house natural gas consumption for heating. So 77% reliance on the natural gas. That is a major source of emissions. So for our first discussion of reducing it to reducing the reliance on natural gas through electrification, let us say fuel switching. And second one, installs on-site solar PV systems so that we can reduce the emissions of scope 2 electricity. And the third one is install lighting controls to reduce electrical consumption.
Oh, excellent. Okay, so 3 very good, specific, smart, measurable, and I think realistic, although for some organizations, depending on funding, solar PV may be challenging, depending, but I think overall those were really good.
IESO really is providing $860 for 10 kilowatt and above. That's why.
Yeah. Patrick is not able to hear. Patrick, I'm not sure if it's on our end because does anyone else have trouble hearing me? It may be, Patrick, your sound settings. Check your sound settings to see where your sound is coming through. That might be it, because I think other folks can hear me. Yes? Yes, mostly?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay. Sorry about that, Patrick. I can't help you on that. It might be on your end. Excellent. So let me check the chat here because I think we've got some other folks. Lucas talked about here the identify how much each piece of equipment contributes to GHG emissions. Okay, that's a good one. I think that's like on your way to getting to a key result is in collecting that data, right? But it might not specifically be a key result, but it sounds like a really good plan, that first one. Replace the gas space heating with clean electricity, so heat pumps, leading to a 20% reduction. That's a great one. And employ fuel switching strategy for a 40% reduction. Excellent. And then we've also got another one here. So in 2024, conduct energy audit to identify opportunities to address excessive EUIs, determine baseline, and identify saving emissions reduction opportunities. Great. So it's, again, a great step. It might be work that needs to happen before you set the key result, but it itself might not be exactly a key result just because it doesn't directly lead to the objective being met. Reduce EUIs by 30% with focus on moving off natural gas. That's a good one. And electrify existing gas heating systems by 2040 and adopt electric systems for new buildings by 2050. Excellent. Yeah, those are good. I think it's very much like we understand the importance of data, especially as engineers and folks working in energy management. You know that you need to make data-driven decisions, and that your KRs should be data-driven. So I can completely understand how you would sort of work that into a key result. Specifically, the collecting data piece would not necessarily qualify as a key result, but it may be the homework that is required for you to set key results that would be effective, for sure.
So in that case, Amanda,
yeah.
sorry to jump in.
No. I'm happy to have folks jump in.
Should the data analysis come before the goal is even established, or because in this case we don't have a lot of information, right? So our point of view is to pull up more information before we decide what to do.
Yeah, I think like this is a case study, and we're kind of doing best case key results based on the information that we have, and we have to make some assumptions, right? And we kind of we have to assume some things about the data we have, but probably we won't be able to set perfect key results, but it's more about the exercise of imagining what those key results could be that would be, they have to be, right? They have to have that connection to the objective. They have to be sort of that dependent things that have to happen in order to meet that. So I think it assumes the exercise that we do a little bit of kind of imagining of some of that with the data that we have. But I think it doesn't mean that it's not important to collect the data, and I do think that's part of the exercise that comes sort of in advance. And it also is about involving other people, right? So that data might come from other folks and getting those people involved. So I don't know if that provides a bit of clarity on that. We have Patrick.
Yeah, thank you.
So thanks, Lucas. I think it is a typo. I think the objective is to reduce emissions by 2050, not 2025. I think, Patrick, that's a good point. I was looking at it as I pulled it up on the screen, and I think 1 year is really not a very realistic goal. And also because the other data that was related to the building upgrades and new procurement of buildings was associated with 2050. I think that the target was meant to be 2050, so definitely a longer time frame there. We also had one from Roderick on decentralizing the district steam to remove natural gas as a primary energy source and localize to individual buildings and challenge the need for steam. Absolutely. I think a big part of this was in switching off of that very GHG intensive natural gas. So I think everyone did a really good job here considering the typo challenges, the challenges with the document being shared across everyone and not in the sort of downloadable state that we originally normally put it in. So I apologize, and I thank you, although I think that, you know, the exercise still kind of got the main point across, that these key results really need to be things that lead to the objective being met 100%. So we're going to keep going just because we want to be mindful of time, and we do have another short breakout that will allow you to think about your own objectives in your own organization. So I want to make sure that we do get to that. Okay, so thinking back to the Netflix example, and I think this is a little bit also where Lucas was kind of getting to with some of the comments around getting data. You know, there's definitely some things that might have happened before they were able to establish those key results in the Netflix case and really meet the objective. It was not done by one person in the organization. If you want to get the benefits of commitment and alignment, you need everyone to agree that those are the right objectives and key results. And that means involving people in the process of developing them. So what information might have been gathered beforehand thinking about who might have been involved in determining that, right? Those are really important things to note. Objectives and key results need to be based on data and accurate data, and you can't do it in isolation. You have to collaborate with people. And ultimately, you also need a plan to report on that progress regularly and build consensus around that. So before we do an exercise involving your own organization, I would just like to know if your organization has existing energy objectives. If not, you can, when we go into this next section, you can actually use the same target from the case study. But I'd like you to think now, do you currently have a sort of high level objective or target that you're trying to meet related to energy? And you can feel free to unmute and share. You can type it in the chat. I would love to hear a little bit from you all on your kind of state within your organization around your objectives.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. So my name is Atim Suko, and I currently work for Devon. We have current corporate energy objectives to reduce GHG emissions. 20% by 2029, 40% by 2035, and 100% by 2050, which I think that is very ambitious.
Yeah, it sounds very ambitious. And okay, great. So you have these targets. Do you have also key results set up, like a kind of path or plan to get there? Or is that something you're thinking about and considering?
So we've completed one, the Carville Community Center that has just been completed, which is a green building with more heat pumps, solar panels, and the energy facility department we're currently making plans to procure more solar panels for more buildings that are energy that have more high EUI, especially natural gas.
Okay, great. So you do have some key results, especially related to renewables, it sounds like. Great. Yeah, does anyone else have objectives around energy management that they would be willing to share? Oh, I see Roderick has added into the chat a 30% reduction in energy by 2030 versus the 2019 baseline. And it's irregardless of company growth. So it's not an intensity-based target. It's an absolute target. Excellent, Roderick. So that is a specific thing. And Roderick, do you have key results? Like, do you have kind of a plan or path to get there, and who's kind of responsible for what for that as well at this stage? You can just feel free to type in the chat or unmute and share. Roderick. Okay. And Alan, it looks like, oh, not 100% agreed, but I am in charge of that strategy and roadmap. Well, I guess you're in the right place then, Roderick, because we're going to go into talking about what might be some KRs. And obviously, within this workshop here, we're just kind of hitting the tip of the iceberg and starting to think about the process of how to set those KRs. Probably won't set the perfect ones in this next breakout, but start to maybe think about them. And it sounds like, yeah, you have projects started and others in the pipeline. Excellent. Iman has 20% reduction by 2030 versus 2017 baseline, regardless of the growth. So again, an absolute target. Those are challenging ones, aren't they? That we have to always factor in what growth is coming down the pipeline, new facilities, and all of that, and especially depending on the industry you're in, sometimes the growth can be very impactful. And we have Alan mentioned emission reduction targets with specific timed performance achievements. Thank you, Alan, for sharing. Excellent. So
Amanda,
definitely. Oh, go ahead, Alan. Yes.
No, just wanted to expand a little bit. So we do
I
have
would love that.
very quantified emission reduction targets, 35% and 20. Oh God, let me try this again. Carbon neutral by 2028 for electricity, carbon neutral for natural gas by 2035. We do have an environmental action plan that is reviewed annually.
Okay.
Where we identify what are our key requirements to achieve those targets.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing. You have very specific ones there, and also it looks like other folks have them. Absolute carbon reduction by 47%. That's a very specific number that was probably very data driven, I'm assuming, from Mohammed, by 2030. And then Michelle has an absolute target of 20% reduction by 2030, 40% by 2041, based on baseline year of 2014. So net zero targets not yet approved, so in the process. Okay, great. So it sounds like many of you do have some objectives already set for your organization, and some of you may also have some key results identified for that. But I would like us to spend, and I think Sophia, we're gonna have to do about 10 minutes here just for time's sake. We've kind of spent a little bit more time chatting, but I think that's okay. We want you to go into a breakout again for 10 minutes and share a little bit around what your OKRs maybe are or might be, and then what information you might need or who needs to be involved in really like launching those key results. So we'll go in for about 10 minutes. I just want to give you a little heads up that there should be a countdown in the top left corner of your screen. It will tell you actually how much time you have left. So hopefully a little bit less shocking. But we'll send you off quickly now because we are getting low on time, and I want to give you a chance to talk with each other about this. So Sophia, are you all set up to get folks sent off for 10 minutes?
Alrighty.
Okay, great. So let's send them in to talk a bit about what KRs could support their objective, hypothetical or actual objectives that you have. And we'll see you back here shortly in about 10 minutes. Welcome back, everybody.
I don't also recall doing a switch from the phase 1 to the phase 2 report. That doesn't mean that it wasn't there. I just don't. That's that. I don't.
Hello, I'll maybe just.
I don't remember having.
Ask that you guys mute
I'm
if
assuming
possible.
We're talking about sort of a.
I think. Thank you. Excellent. I hope the conversation was productive, and I hope it wasn't too much this time of a abrupt departure back into the main room. We are a little bit short on time today, so we spent a bit more time chatting, which is totally fine. So we won't debrief from that breakout, although I would love to hear about the key results that you set. If you do want to share anything with the rest of the group, feel free to put some of those key results into the chat as I kind of wrap things up here to make sure that we're getting you all out on time today. So I wanted to just share a few tips for getting started with setting OKRs. And one big thing, especially when we're talking about, getting other people involved, getting that buy-in, and getting alignment. One thing we've seen successful within organizations is hosting a strategic alignment session to really get everybody working together and get consensus on the key results that you're setting in service of your objectives. This might not just be a meeting, right? It might be a session that involves sort of going over data, sharing information and data, talking about priorities and things like that. So, this can be a more involved session, or, it can be less involved, or it might be more than one. But I think hosting something to get everyone on board can be a really effective strategy. Also, I wanted to mention the importance of not just working top down, but also bottom up. One of the kind of also failure factors, and sometimes having these objectives and key results set at a top level or at a high level down, is that they're not really rooted in people's real challenges or experiences within an organization. They can be sort of very high level and not feel unachievable or feel challenging based on, the resources or the time, or just how sort of aggressive the targets might be set. So also talking to folks at different levels of the organization and getting their buy-in and feedback on the key results and if they're achievable, I think is really important. It's also really important to create a clear timeline. So this isn't just about setting measurable targets that are time bound, but also creating a timeline for sort of your process of setting key results and targets. So giving yourself some boundaries around when you want to have those key results in place, and then how you want to communicate them, right? So what's your strategy for getting the word out to those folks who might not have been involved so much in the creating of them, but who do care about them and could influence them? So how are you going to get the message out that you've got these new sort of objectives and key results that you're working on within your organization? So these are very important. I love that Mohammed says objectives are top down and awareness is bottom up. And I think that's a great point. And yeah, I think it can fluctuate. It can also go both ways. So I want to mention this is something coming up. So this workshop was very kind of high level. We're talking about strategies, talking about some of the ways to approach thinking about these key objectives and key results and setting targets. We are having a coaching session that is going to be a lot more in-depth, as in you're going to be in small groups with a coach who will help you think about, help you start setting these and making a plan. So this is happening on April 25th. So just coming up later this month. It's a 90-minute workshop, and I've had Sophia just drop the registration link. So if you're interested in participating in a more in-depth coaching session on this, please do register and come out to that, because it's going to get a little more detailed. And it's really nice that the timing flows through to this. Kyle, April 24th or 25th, it's the date that is on the registration link. So if it's wrong on my slide, it's the date that's on the registration link. Thank you. Also want to mention quickly, our one-on-one coaching service is designed to support your organization. So there's all these great resources as part of the Save on Energy program. I'm also going to have Sophia drop links for that in the chat. I won't talk in detail about them, but there's a bunch of links to the monthly bulletin, the live training calendar, the training and support web page, and the post-webinar support intake form as well. And then a quick heads up that there will be a survey coming out. We want feedback on the program. So do notice if you get an email from surveyinfo@forumresearch.com, it's not phishing, it's a real survey that we would love to get your feedback on. It only takes 5 minutes to complete, and it really helps us shape the program and make it better. And it's completely confidential, so do stay tuned for that. It's going to be coming out soon. I just want to thank everyone for attending today, for engaging and sharing. And I would like for us to think about, as we say goodbye, one thing you will do in the next week that will really help your organization's targets drive action. Okay, so thank you all so much and have a great rest of your week. And we hope to see you next time.